Hello and welcome to the interview on France 24. After the Rwandan genocide of 1994, the world said never again, just as it had done after the Holocaust. And yet, since Rwanda, the world's response to many African conflicts has been found wanting, even if those conflicts aren't always clear-cut cases of genocide. One can recall the international community's engagement with the Democratic Republic of Congo, or with Darfur, or Blue Nile and South Kordofan states in Sudan. More recently, the outside world's responses to South Sudan and to the Central African Republic have been in the spotlight. I'm joined today by a man whose job it is to detect and to help prevent future genocides. Adama Dieng is the UN Secretary-General's Special Advisor on the Prevention of Genocide. He previously worked for the International Criminal Tribunal for Rwanda, and before that, he had a distinguished legal career in his native Senegal. He joins me today from Washington, D.C. Adama Dieng, a welcome to you, and it's good to have you back on the program.
My pleasure.
Let's start with the Central African Republic. The United Nations defines genocide, and I'm quoting here from the Convention, as acts committed with intent to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. So is what's happening to the Muslims of the Central African Republic genocide?
Genocide doesn't happen overnight. It is a process. And there are symptoms now which, of course, when we look into those symptoms of that process, which are being exhibited in Central African Republic, there is no doubt that the situation is extremely worrying.
You wouldn't call it genocide yet in that case?
Not yet, but it is clear that there are acts which are being committed. I mean, the current violence, crimes against humanity are being committed. We have people who are being targeted simply on the ground of their religion. And there are factors which definitely lead to the definition you indicated, because we have seen civilian population have been targeted because of their religion or their ethnicity. And we have now, I may say, what one can consider as potential genocidal acts.
Okay.
And that is why, yeah.
As Ban Ki-moon's special advisor on this kind of situation, do you feel powerful or powerless in relation to Central African Republic today?
I would say there is still hope, in the sense that we were fortunate to have, although a bit late, France deploying troops, that's the Sangari. And on 19 December, while I was in Bangui, we had MISCA being put in place with a general who is really very responsible, General Mokoko. And without the deployment of the French troops and this African MISCA troop, I'm afraid the situation would have been worse. But what we are witnessing today is so shocking that, to my view, it is critical that the international community do much more and assist those troops.
We'll get onto that. We'll get onto that in a moment, Adama Dieng. But just in terms of the response, you yourself sounded the alarm last year, and you were accused of exaggerating. Does that mean that the UN has not really taken this seriously enough over the last few months?
Well, as you may know, most of the time people are afraid to hear about genocide because what we call the G word. But I think now people realize that maybe I was even a bit late in sounding the alarm. Hopefully, the situation is changing. We are facing now what the Secretary General called a test of solidarity for the international community. And as you know, the Secretary General had launched also an important initiative called the Rights Up Front. and which make sure that within at least the UN, we will make every effort possible. But now we have to realize that the member states have also a responsibility to play.
What could a solution look like, though? I mean, given that there doesn't seem to be anyone obvious to talk to, neither on the side of the anti-Balaka groups, nor on the side of the Muslim civilian population?
Well, I should say that there are efforts ongoing. If I take for quite some time, even in 2012, already the Archbishop and the Supreme Imam were trying to engage a dialogue. And my office is very much encouraged by the current authorities to facilitate this process of reconciliation. Because at the end of the day, security is important for the country. It is important also to pay attention to the national reconciliation. As I said earlier, the hatred is such that unless we make those efforts, as Secretary General Ban Ki-moon say, it may take a generation to bring again these two communities together. And that is why we should start immediately with a series of peace forums and continue embarking on this dialogue so that really we can hope that the Central African people will get back to their harmony.
There seems to be a sort of stock response by the international community, which is a mixture of sending in peacekeeping troops and supporting the idea of new elections. Is it time to fundamentally rethink that and, as you say, focus on national reconciliations in these situations? And what do you think that could really involve? I mean, you mentioned the peace forums, but who do you see actually participating in that?
Well, I mean, just because there are religious leaders, youth, women, traditional leaders, there is a series of groups which will be part of that process. And there will be two phases. The first phase will be this dialogue, and the second phase, there will be committees established within the provinces. But on top of that, there will be a national committee for the prevention of genocide, crimes against humanity, and all forms of discrimination, which is in fact a requirement under the ICGLR, the Great Lake Regional Protocol on Genocide, which, as you know, have national committees in some countries like Tanzania, Kenya, etc. And we are hoping that through that committee, we will be able really to encourage a better constructive management of diversity in Central African Republic.
I'd like to ask you what you think of the call. We hear this from the French, and they made the same call in Mali for elections relatively soon. Does that really make sense? I mean, if you have a country where most of the Muslim population has been chased away or battered or killed, wouldn't that be cannibal democracy to hold an election in that circumstance?
Well, I may say that in the case of Mali, at the time, I personally had reservation, but maybe I was wrong. But in the case of Central African Republic, I should say again that Central African Republic is not Mali. Mali, you had at least institutions which were there. You had a civil society. But in Central African Republic, there is almost nothing. The courts, for instance, are inexistent. And that is why I believe it is extremely important to pay attention immediately to bringing to justice the perpetrators of those atrocities.
And I know you've called for a swift investigation in the International Criminal Court. You've spoken to the chief prosecutor of the ICC about this. I just want to come to one important point, though. Part of your job is obviously looking at ways to prevent genocide happening in the future. We saw a very frightening dynamic in Central African Republic where there didn't seem to be a religious enemy. In fact, Central Africans prided themselves on religious tolerance. And then an enemy was found very quickly, and then things moved very quickly. What lessons do you draw from that in terms of possible prevention?
Well, impunity led to really this situation. So first, it is extremely important to address the issue of accountability. Those people who are commanding these atrocities, those people who are killing, who are maiming, who are raping, who are looting, who are committing abuses, they have to know that today, tomorrow, they will be arrested and face justice. And it is in that regard that I supported strongly the chief prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Fatou Bensouda, and I'm making a call for the international community, for MISCA, for United Nations, for the Central African Republic authorities, because CAR is a state party to the ICC, to bring their support to the chief prosecutor. Because at the end of the day, if we don't address now the issue of impunity, I'm afraid that we will continue seeing these crimes being committed. And that is why we should not waste time on politics of justice, because the ICC is an independent court. Unfortunately, Africa does not have yet a regional criminal court who could take this case. As I said earlier, CAR doesn't have now even a court in existence. Let's make effort so that in the coming days, at least we have a mobile court being deployed throughout the country, but at the same time supporting the preliminary investigation which the chief prosecutor of ICC is conducting.
Okay, we'll have to watch that very carefully. Thank you so much for being a guest on the interview, Adama Dieng, Ban Ki-moon's special advisor on the prevention of genocide at the United Nations. That's all for the interview on France 24 today.